Welcome, and thank you so very much for joining me on another episode of Talking Cloud. I know I haven't changed the name, but I've been thinking about it because what we talk about is innovation and technology, but we're going to go with Talking Cloud for now. I really appreciate you being here. You know, we talk really about anything in the world of computing. I think I mentioned before, I named it Talking Cloud in 2019 because I really believe that's the model that will prevail for a long, long time. You know, we like to just plug in and pay. So I've said so many times, I'm sure you can fill the following in. I'm no professor, I'm just a Gilligan, but I get amazing guests, brilliant guests doing great stuff. Sometimes we have a little bit of a lean towards security, if you hadn't noticed. And today is certainly no exception. Awesome guest. I've got the CISO for Hydrolix, and we're going to learn all about it in a minute here. And his name is Joshua Scott. You can look him up on LinkedIn. Joshua, it's great to have you here, man. Thanks so much for joining me on the program.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Grant.
Yeah. So, look, I mean, my introduction is just saying who you are and company. Everybody's going to go scurry and look, but I'm willing to have a chat. I got a lot of questions in my mind, kind of, you know, I'm thinking of it on the do you ever answer your phone? If it's ever any name other than someone you know, that's a question. But other than that, tell me a little about Hydrolix yourself. What's going on, man?
All right. Well, so Hydrolix, I've been with the Hydrolix almost going on a year, pretty close to a year. We're a streaming data lake platform. Basically, we allow companies to store massive amounts of data, petabyte scale data, and be able to query it and use it in near real time. Basically, get the economies of scale. It's a platform that's built on object level storage. So there's patents on the technology, but it's one of the reasons why I joined the company is I really like the value proposition of being able to store lots and lots of data, being able to access that data really quickly, and be able to store it for cheap. It's always been one of the biggest challenges we have in security is we generate so much data.
Right, right, exactly.
But to answer your question, I don't answer my phone hardly ever.
Yeah,
It's unless it's a number I recognize and I'm expecting the phone call. That's
yeah,
generally guidance is send me a text if you want me to answer.
yeah. Interesting. Well, it seems, I mean, certainly the last, let's call it decade, maybe shy of, I feel like, you know, the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, you know, has all of a sudden just the red dot of the dartboard is right there. You know, every company, who's your buyer? Oh, it's the CISO. You know, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you may have the purse strings or the yay nay decision making in terms of a budgetary ask within the sphere of security, but you by no means are under the covers, so to speak, the decision maker, are you?
No,
Again, I understand ultimately you can say, hey, Grant, I'm not doing it, but that's not how you operate, is it?
no, definitely not. I mean, we may be classified as the buyer, but for the most part, that's just guidance I've given to various vendors. It's like, you got to get my team to buy off on it. You got to convince them that this is the right solution because I want to make sure that whatever we move forward with, that my team signed off on it. Not to
Yep.
mention a lot of times too is now, if you're buying something and you've got to convince the engineering team to use this particular tool or the operations team or whomever. So we might be part of the buying process, but we're not the ultimate,
Yep.
decision maker aside from like maybe the budget.
Yep.
But
Yep.
there's a lot of
Sure.
other people to get involved. And that's the thing I think most startups don't realize. It's like, okay, don't just reach out to us. Convince my team first or convince,
Right.
if you're a data security posture management company, we got to convince the data team, the data engineers and those
Right.
folks. It's going to be an
Right.
impact for them.
If you're a better screwdriver, you got to talk to the guys that are turning the screwdrivers, right?
100%. Yep.
And you know, I know in the world of enterprise sales, right, SME or otherwise, I think it's one of the biggest mistakes, right? Companies forget, or I should say, salespeople forget that they really shouldn't focus on um, getting what they want, right? If I'm all about sell, sell, sell what I have, whatever it is, that to me is not a winning proposition. It's really, what is it that you need? What is it that you want that I can marry up with something within my portfolio? Because it's not always a product, right? Sometimes it's reduced risk. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's lowest budget. I mean, there's lots of different. Sometimes it's notoriety. Sometimes it's like, hey, look at this product I selected, right?
Yeah.
So there's lots of interesting dynamics that go on, and it's funny how all roads lead to the CISO.
Yeah.
But in this world where you have 3, 4, 5, however many thousand, security vendors, there's no way you can drink from that fire hose and get it all.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean, it's
something I bring up a
impossible.
lot is you've got to be very, what are you solving? Are you solving a problem for me? And is it a problem I have right now too? Because there's always 100 problems in security. We're going to be staffed to do about 10, right? That's just
Right.
kind of the nature of it. You got to prioritize. So are we choosing those right 10? And it's at times it's opportunistic.
Sure.
I've had vendors reach out to me at the exact time that I needed a security scanning solution or a data
Mm-hmm.
solution. But 99 of the other times that they've reached out, it's like, oh no, I don't need that right now. It's not in my
Yeah.
budget or it's not on my roadmap for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is opportunistic too.
It's, that's an interesting thing, because I guess what that turns into really is the high value of a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because, if I'm working for ABC and, our products just aren't, what it is you have or need or want at this moment, having that relationship ensures that at least you go, oh, hey, I need that now. I'm going to contact or reach out, right? I mean, I think
Yep.
that that's and that's the long game, Joshua.
Yep.
It doesn't seem like there's a lot of guys that play the long game. You know what I mean?
Yep. 100%. I mean, I think the relationship part is huge. Just in the last like couple months, some a company I provided some advice to, when they were just getting started, they reached out literally at the right time. So it was part of it was the relationship and the opportunity, opportunistic. We needed the
Yeah.
solution at that time. It's like, oh, perfect
Yeah.
timing. I know them and I know they helped me out and gave me a really good deal too because of the relationship and because of obviously the opportunity. So I think there's a
Yeah.
lot to be said about relationships, the opportunity, and are you solving a real problem for that particular CISO or
Sure.
for that?
Yeah. I always stratify it as uh, vitamin, aspirin, or crack. Um, you know, I mean, we all, as software developers or builders, aspire to make crack, right? You see it and you use it once. It's like, oh my God, man, have you seen that? We got to get that. But
I like all the
really,
AI tools nowadays.
boy, there's some, that's, you brought it up. So here goes. I just read an article, Joshua. This is according to Gartner, that we spent 1.5 trillion on AI in 2025. You know what, 2026 they're saying it's going to be 2 trillion.
Wow,
I
that's
mean,
crazy.
and my assumption, because I never saw any report, I only saw the reference and attribution to Gartner, was that it's all things AI, right?
Right.
And when you look at some of NVIDIA's machine slides where they talk about their ecosystem machine or whatever it is, you can understand it's massive. So let's talk about your view of your use of your success with AI.
All right. I mean, so I'm very bullish on AI. Obviously, as a practitioner, as a security person, I think there's a ton of value. It also scares me because there's a lot of risk that comes with it.
Yep.
I think it's extremely powerful. I mean, I've been using it for a couple of years since ChatGPT first came out, and just for
Sure.
simple things, how do you rewriting a policy, rewriting a document, those kind of things. If you can cut out 50% of the work, or even 20% of the work, it's still a net add to your time.
No
The way I always
question.
look at it is, security, goes back to kind of one of my earlier statements, but we have 100 things to do at any given time, probably, right? We're always going to be short staffed, because that should be the case, right? Because we should be working on the things that matter the most. So, where there's 100 things to do, we're staffed to do 10. That means if we can actually use AI and automation and other types of things to reduce that 100 down to 75, then that means we're able to do work that, we weren't doing before, but we're able to accomplish it through AI and through automation.
Yep.
Or if we can cut out bodies of work in, simple things like, again, reviewing policies, or reviewing some of the material that we write, because a lot of what we do in security is fairly bespoke. It depends on, it's interrupt driven. It's the request comes in from a team saying we need to evaluate or analyze this particular product, or is there risks here. AI is great for those kind of things. It's a
Yep.
great brainstorming partner. But again,
Yep.
AI is one of those things where, uh, in the hands of somebody competent, it's great. It can be a force multiplier. It can be an enabler of sorts. But in the hands of somebody that doesn't know, then it becomes kind of dangerous, because
Yep.
how do you know it didn't hallucinate? How do you know it didn't put things in there that aren't factually correct?
Yep.
And that's kind of the risks I see with it. But
Yeah,
I
and
use it
the
every
other
day.
side, I mean, I use it every day too. Very bullish. I'm right there with you. I also have my concerns, but one of the other sides, if you will, of that blade, or the other edge, is the how drastically the bar has come down for the nefarious, if they're capable with the tool AI. And I mean, come on, capable means, can you write in English, or can you write in whatever your language? Can you write?
Yeah,
Can you describe?
you don't even have to write. You can just talk to it.
Exactly. But I do think there's a skill that's going to um, uh, be identified by those that get it, and that is what they call prompt engineering. And I think you know to call it engineering is a little insult to the
Yeah,
engineers around the world. Sorry, double E's. But it is really so key to understand. You can have a prompt that's pages and pages long, right? And most people don't have that A, understanding, or B, tolerance, or really use. They don't see it, right? I think that's uh, when you start to see it that way, you start to see the power it really represents, I think, you
yeah,
know.
I would agree 100%. I mean, that's something I've coached my teams on, and even myself, I've taken a lot of, read a lot of stuff on prompt engineing, and
You can ask your assistant. That's what I did
yeah,
in my very early days 2 years ago. I got a Claude account, and I asked Claude to give me, the syllabus, so I could learn how to be a good prompter and understand it. I mean,
yeah,
it basically asked it to teach me.
yeah.
And
I do that a lot.
and I've said for a long time, Joshua, we now have an assistant that knows everything the internet knows, but is truly dumb as a rock without the right prompt. And I believe the response you get back from said know everything on the end of internet assistant is going to be commensurate to the effort prompt that you put in to what you want to know, because
Yep,
that's a vast bucket, right? So if
yep.
you just say, can you make this more professional? That's so anemic. You're going to kind of get an equal effort in the response. Now, that's my conjecture. I don't know if it's true
No,
or
I
not, but
agree. I mean, context matters, right? So if you don't provide it with sufficient context on what you want it to do,
yeah,
what persona it should be acting as, and what specifics you want. Like, here's, I want you to review this, and I want you to provide an analysis based on this, as if you were a security engineer, as if you were
yeah,
a CISO or a marketing
yeah.
person, whatever it happens to be.
Are you
And then
teaching
I want
your
you to
team?
output it like this.
Yeah. Are you teaching your team that? Do you guys
Oh
go
yeah,
through training and that kind of stuff? What about
yeah.
the rest of the organization?
I mean, we've become fairly bullish now on AI as well. So that we're using Claude everywhere. We're rolling out Claude Code across
Hmm.
most engineering teams and some of the operation teams. I mean, I myself am using Claude Code on a regular basis because it's I also own the IT department here, and it's amazing what it can do. It's not just a coding tool, right? It can
Yep.
actually do quite a bit more: administration of systems and cloud
Oh,
administration. You give it the CLIs for your cloud providers, for AWS or for Azure or for GCP, and it can actually kick off those commands. And
yep.
that's powerful because now it's something that before we had to go research, or I haven't been in the cloud for a while. I forgot how to run this particular command in
Yep.
GCP. It can actually handle that for me. So it's
Yep.
actually been a force multiplier there as well. So I'm trying to
And
get
it's so multifaceted, Joshua, because if you're building software, right? If you're creating a solution, if you're adding features to your solution, I mean, you've got built-in genius in product management. I mean, everything,
intern level genius. That's the
intern.
interesting. Yeah,
It's
intern level
it's
genius, but
true.
it's a really smart intern. But if you
Yes,
don't give it context and you don't give it direction, it's going to go somewhere you don't want it to go.
totally spot on. And it was funny because the guy who I love him, Steve DeYoung, he was led development for when I bought MetaInfo back from Checkpoint. He's a great guy, and I was talking to him, and he says, he was trying to use it, and he said, I've come to believe that using AI to write code is like having a junior developer that can type really, 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 really fast.
Yeah,
And I
so
thought that
true.
was really funny.
Yeah.
But it is important because there is you can't just take it and go. You
Right.
and
Oh
and
yeah.
you have to. It's almost like, in my analogy, it's like this wash rag that's just dripping with sycophantic desires, and you have to wring it out and slap it around and squeeze as much of that out so it really sees that you don't want to hear, oh, Joshua, man, that's such a brilliant idea, you're an Einstein. You know what I mean? Because if you don't watch out, you can get seduced into believing that.
Yeah, I was reading an article actually recently about that, about how mediocre developers are now thinking they're much, much better than they really are because of
Mm.
the AI is telling them, "Oh, that's a brilliant idea." It's something I actually put into my prompt and my instructions for both Claude and ChatGPT to say, don't over embellish, don't talk to me
No
like,
bullshit. Yeah.
yeah, no bullshit, all that. Keep it
And
simple.
people don't realize you can go into the settings. That's not something you have to type in when you prompt. You can reiterate it, but this is in the settings and configurations, and you can be quite verbose about how you won't put up with that stuff, and it makes a
Yeah.
difference,
It
right?
makes a
It
huge
really.
difference. I've noticed just between me and maybe another person on my team, right? I'll have something in my instructions that say don't embellish and no bullshit,
Right.
and they'll have the default, and then you
Yeah.
see the answers that it provides, and it provides a vastly different answer,
Yeah.
and they may think that they're on the right track because it's like, oh, that's a great idea, even though it's not, and then
Yeah.
mine's saying it's an okay idea.
It's almost like, the width of the path, right? If you just imagine this very dense cornfield, and the width of the path, without squeezing and wringing out that desire to just tell you how great and brilliant you are, as that narrows the path where you will not go off some wrong direction. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It seems like that helps, but it's definitely a game changer. So tell me, how much in your world do you see the impact of AI in terms of workforce? And then does it create a conundrum because we don't have junior people learning the skills that they can take? Where do you kind of stand on all of that?
That's a good question. So I think I'll address the junior person side because I've tried to stay away from having junior folks in security because I think the pathway to security, at least my pathway, I came through help desk and network and systems,
Right.
back in the mid '90s, and that provided me a lot of that base kind of core knowledge that
Yeah.
kind of translated over security.
Yeah.
And
I
for
always
me,
tell people, help desk, try to get into some service provider or somebody and,
become a
work the
domain
front
expert in
line.
some technology topic, and then the transition to security is easy because we always need people that understand a particular technology or set of technologies or a domain,
Mm-hmm.
and those are
Mm-hmm.
probably the best ones to transition over. So that's with AI, I don't see it replacing jobs. I don't see it taking away work. Again, it goes back to we have 100 things to do. We're staffed to do 10. So I see it reducing the overall total amount of work that we should be doing, or reducing some of the more mundane type stuff, right? How can we
Yep.
use it to automate and simplify? I mean, vendor risk assessments is a perfect example. A lot of that is just, hey, let me fill out these kind of forms. Let me go gather this information. Let me write up
Totally.
something that's fairly consistent. Like, why can't we use AI to, cut out half that work? Even if you cut out only half, that's still a demonstrable improvement over just not cutting out any, right? These are time
Yep.
consuming things that we have to do.
No doubt. And it seems like the market, the industry, the world is implying going down the path that it's all going to be agents. We're going to
Yeah.
kind of have the internet of agents, these little, armies of specific
Yep.
tasks, and I can certainly MCP is kind of a game changer, right? I mean, just in terms of interoperability and having the ability to just really interconnect,
Yeah.
pretty amazing. Um, but there's an interesting. There was an interesting presentation that I saw from our new at Checkpoint, the new CTO, a guy named Jonathan Zanger, and he's Israeli, 8,200 for a
Mhm.
ton of years, focused specifically on AI, machine learning. I mean, the guy's like a wizard. He's amazing, and he presented something that really, at a very high level, I thought was very interesting, and it was for years the way and what we've secured, and my feeble brain puts it like we almost have another layer in the stack, another, and I know we don't, right, because it largely lives in the app layer because we're talking to AI apps. But what I mean is right now or before, you could say computer with me sends commands to a server, checks a data store, answers, comes back. I mean, and that was kind of that's what we secured, that's what we expected, that's what we watched, monitored, right? And unless specifically directed to go to a different store, a different resource, there wasn't arbitrarily and autonomous decisions on where else to go, like we'll have in the AI world with agents. And furthermore, where before that communication, albeit came from me, was a command across the wire through the air, uh, now those commands are English or language, whatever I'm familiar with, and the processing's taking place not on a server but an LLM. Okay, it's a server, but it's different because it can then, maybe it's going to go to agents, maybe it's going to go somewhere else. I mean, the world's all of a sudden changed in what we have to secure
Yeah. And then you add in
because of
something
that
like
workflow.
Yeah, and then you add in something like MCPs, where now you on a local system, you've got a local MCP that's maybe querying a database system, a finance system, whatever it happens to be. Now that data that exists in that secured platform that you've got your controls on is now flowing to the end user's workstation and then flowing into the LLM for processing too. So it
Yeah.
just changes kind of the whole, the way we look at security, the risk
And,
posture,
you know,
where they live.
it does. And I think about these agents, and they have to have the controls, granular controls, that will only allow me to access their access controls have to be dynamic based on who it is that communication is with, right? Because you and I in the same organization talking to the same agent or corresponding and having communications with the same agent should not be able to reach the same data on the other side of that communication, I would think.
Right.
You, as the CISO, would have a much broader access than me, the admin for pen testing or whatever that Gilligan does. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
100%.
and so does that just really gets me thinking about how does that, I don't know. I have to look into it, but how does that get implemented?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that
I
I
think we need a
can,
paradigm shift with how we actually manage identities and credentials. And is an identity in the agent world the same as a user, or is there something else? Right. Do we
yeah,
need to start treating them like users, and giving them, certain types of privileges, but then, even if an MCP that's actually logging in as me, well, if it's interfacing with an MCP from an LLM standpoint, maybe I don't want it to do exactly what I can do, right? And then, within the AI, you have tool calls that you can approve or deny, but most people just click accept. The
yes,
average person is
yes,
going to click accept. So it's like there's almost this whole like other level of access that needs to be provided. Like,
under
so I've got
of
my normal access, I've got
granularity.
my AI
Yeah,
identity, I
yeah,
got my AI identity and my normal identity.
right. Well, certainly we know, uh, there's way more machine identities because of cloud and
Yeah.
every,
Oh,
but now we've just introduced, a plethora of additional new potential identities, right? It begs the question. This is something I think I've talked about before. I'd love your 2 cents on. We're both been around for a while. We talked about that at the beginning, where about the same time, and so a couple of things. One, Moore's law came out in '65. Okay, and it has proven still today it's right. Now, maybe not the same methods today as it was in '65 or '75,
right.
but nonetheless, the pace hasn't changed. We're still
Right.
seeing all of those same advancements. So the internet really didn't come about until after ARPANET and the whole bubble, right? Mid '90s.
Yeah,
So,
that's actually when I got started. 1995 was when like the commercial internet really became a thing.
so, so 20 years of Moore's law showing this is true. And we went through this period of everybody's got their own fishbowl, their own protocol, and then voila, we realize, oh, TCP/IP, and the mistake, I believe, was we approached it like Woodstock. No tickets required. You just got to set it up. Everything's free. All the protocols, DNS, DHCP, everything you want, all free as long as you know how to awk and grep and run Unix. And there's no security because it's free love, baby. Come on, clothing optional. And it was that mistake that put us where we are today. And what I believe is, had we said, yes, thank you, university. Yes, brilliant concept. And you don't have to secure it if you don't want to. But what really matters in all of this is the data, the packets, right?
Yeah.
So how could we look at an architecture that focuses on securing that packet to you? I mean, it's zero trust by design, and then you build out from there, as opposed to what we did. We went from the outside perimeter when we realized, hey, we got to secure this, firewalls, and have been working our way down to the data, to the packets. What's your
I
thoughts?
mean, it's an interesting thought. I think the complexity is security is always an afterthought. That's one of the issues, right? So it's great. I mean, we were built, the foundations of everything on the internet were built on kind of protocols that didn't have security embedded into it. So it's always an afterthought. And just look at the MCP standard that came out. Security was not part of it, right? So
Yeah.
that's still the problem even now. And ultimately, security is a roadblock a lot of times. We shouldn't be. We've got to figure out how to make it not so
Yeah.
much a roadblock and make it more seamless. But I think that's always going to be the case. How do you get something to be adopted? Well, if you put insecurity and you make it difficult, I think that's the main reason why, one of the main reasons why security is not as
Yeah.
adopted as it should, is we make it way more complicated than it really needs to be. So in order for something to really succeed, it's got to be simple, built into, the whatever that protocol happens to be, whatever that technology it happens to be, and it's got to be just seamless. It's got to work. Like one of the
Totally
examples
agree.
that we talk about is, when you talk about when I was first in security, I was taught, it's either ease of use on one side or it's total security on the other side. And it's finding that balance between the two.
Right.
And that never really sat well with me because it feels like, why can't we have both?
Yep.
We can have something that's super easy to use and something that's very, very secure. You look at like passwordless technologies. That's
Yep.
actually phishing proof, and it's actually beneficial to the end user because they don't have to remember a password. So
Yep.
we need to think about it from that standpoint: is how do we actually put in technologies and standards and things that make it easier for the end user, because that's how we'll drive adoption.
I completely agree. In fact, I mentioned, I spent several years selling and then working for Apple. And one of the things I absolutely admire, and how much it prevails today with Tim Cook, as it did back then through the Jobs, Scully Jobs era, um, man, it was always just about the customer. It was never about the administrator. It was never about the
Yep.
person in the back office. It was always about the user. And was it consistent, simple, intuitive? I mean, those were key words for them.
Yep.
So much so that, as you may recall, when the Macintosh was originally introduced in 1984, you literally had to sign a contract with Apple that said you would adhere to the user interface guidelines. So where in the DOS world, right? And this was how I used to sell Mac over PCs to companies. I would say, Joshua, how do you print with Lotus 123 slash FPP? Okay. How do you print with WordPerfect? Oh, Shift F7. Okay. How do you print with that new Ashton Tate program that's coming out next month? Oh, I don't know. And then I could turn around and say, well, you know how you print with a Macintosh? With every program? File, print, file, print,
Yep.
right? And my
Really neat.
point was you had to sign a contract, but they also didn't have any keyboard shortcuts or anything. You had, because they were trying to rediscipline users,
Yep.
right? I mean, literally force, and really not users so much as developers, right? To write that.
I
Uh,
remember watching a YouTube video that talked about just how adamant they were about shortcuts on the keyboard, and how it took years and years and years for them to finally introduce something like the command
so
keys and all.
there were several companies that made plugins, right? Extensions, DLLs, what you'd call them in the DOS world, I think. But essentially, uh, extensions to the OS, so they would then put up those. You're exactly right, and Apple resisted, but it was more out of the principle of what they were focused on, right? And I've always admired that, and I think you're spot on. It's always it's always a winning choice, but it's not always the choice. And
Right.
I
It's
always
not always
wonder
it's not
why.
always a relevant or a possible choice, and it's not always the easy choice either. But
Yeah,
I think we need to, we definitely need to shift how we
but
try
it
to
is.
how
I
we push
mean,
security.
how does it? I think security. I was thinking about when you were talking about it. being in it for 25, 8, whatever years, I've seen the messaging. It always goes back to fear.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, obstacle is how it's viewed, but I'm talking about when you're selling and discussing security. If you don't, right, it's the risk where it's also, swung to, because of it, you are enabled, right? And to try to always flip it into what is it enabling? Yes, you're right. You do have to authenticate and look at your phone and type in that number. So your phone has to be with you when you use Authenticator. But you know what it lets you do? It lets you get to our wiki. It lets you get to our internal resources, no matter where you are on the planet.
Yep. That's how we got to be. That's how we need to approach it, is find those, the benefits to the end user, what it enables, what it actually unlocks by putting in this VPN or this single sign-on solution. We allow you to access more, potential systems. So you gain access and you gain the ability to do your work, and we also gain security. So how do we actually marry those two together so that people will adopt technologies? Because the current approach of, MFA is a good example, right? Who wants to type in those 6-digit codes? So when like Okta came out with their their push authentication, it's like, oh my God, that's way simpler. We rolled that out at one of my companies many years ago, and that was huge from an employee standpoint for them. I only have to click a button and say approve, and that's good to go. And of course, there's risks with that, but still, then you move forward to like, fast pass and passwordless technologies. That's so much better for them. They're going to adopt it. There's a benefit for them. And they, the end users are saying, wow, security is really helping us. They're actually making our jobs easier.
Exactly.
Something I did do with my product teams.
I think that it's also incumbent upon, security practitioners, guys like you, your team, to always remember, that they have to get that narrative in their mind, that dialogue when they're outside of let's call it the circle of trust, which is people that understand TCP/IP, DHCP, subnet mask, right? Now, you outside of the circle of trust, people look at you like, what are you talking about?
Deer in headlight.
You know what I'm saying, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so the people that are on the inside have to learn how to turn that, listen, we have to implement this. If we don't, it's going to be into so what for me on the other side, right?
Yep. I think that's something that we miss a lot too within security is instead of being all about fear and uncertainty and all that kind of stuff, let's find, the benefits of it, but also we got to simplify the language we use, right? That's something I learned when I was an engineer, architect for, security stuff. Every time I talk about it, everybody looked at me like they had no idea what I was talking about. And I realized that, all right, I'm not talking in a language they understand. I'm talking in a completely different language to them.
Totally.
So, focus on, what they understand, in terms of the business or in terms of the team. Meet them where they are. I found that from like our development teams. How did we actually make a ton of progress at, one of my previous companies was we met them where they are within the tools they used, and we spoke the language they used, bugs and releases, all those kind of things, instead of like trying to fit security instead of them fitting into our model, we fit into their model.
Right.
And we spoke their language, and it made a huge difference. And then we showed them, hey, look, you do this, you gain security, and you gain these other things too.
Yep. And you'll never be on the newspaper. Your picture won't be listed as,
that risk will always be there. I think that's always the case of, even if you do security right, there's still things that are going to happen, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. But as long as you're prepared for it and you've done, you've done what you need to do.
Yeah. But in my, we have a new CEO, Nadav Zafir, a brilliant guy, man. The guy's amazing. But one of his things that he likes to say is, security is really a game of continuous learning, because it's always something new that is going back and forth. And, I believe there's only one industry that's like ours, and that's kinetic war, but they eventually get to a white flag. not cyber, because of the anonymity. It's like a bowl of water. Somebody decides to stop, you're never going to see a hole there because another finger is going to be going in or is already there. You know what I mean? So it's just an interesting dynamic. It's a good thing, but it's, I mean, a good thing insofar as you want job security, I guess, but you're spot on. Who knows if tomorrow there's going to be a 10 out of 10 CVE that's discovered in something you have.
Yep. Something that you have that you thought was secured, and it's you've got a great architecture, but there's a major vulnerability in it.
Yeah.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we are lifelong learners. It's something I actually ask when I'm interviewing folks to join my various teams. Is I like to understand kind of like the origin stories and what motivates folks and and how to get the best out of them. And I've always found too, like it seems like most security folks really we thrive on learning. Not because I think those are the folks that really excel in security is the ones that do thrive on learning. I've always enjoyed learning. I always, even when I was just a network engineer or help desk person, I was always learning. And I think that's what attracted me to security is I had an opportunity to learn so much more in so many different areas. But you've got to be constantly learning. And, the term experts, like, all right, well, you're never an expert because tomorrow there's going to be
today.
AI is a great, today. Exactly. I mean,
AI is a now
example of
oh man, so
entire
true.
industries and like, categories of product are appearing and disappearing within like, 6 months. It's the frontier models are getting better. They're displacing other types of vendors. And, we've both been in this long enough. We saw how mobile, how quick that moved, how cloud was adopted, but all of those were nothing compared to just how fast.
Nothing. I'm thinking reel to reel, 8-track, cassette. The way we zoom through those various form factors, and you're spot on. But that's happening now with AI capability, advancements, functionality, and it is. For me, it's impossible. I mean, I really do try hard to practice what I preach and, stay up, and I try to read as much as I can about the different technologies. But I remember when I first got into the world of cloud, 2018, and I mean like native, right? I went to work for Dome 9, and I remember how fast moving cloud and cloud native was, and arguably still is. But,
but it's nothing compared to AI.
It's AI is flash compared to, a fast sprinter. I mean, it is so off the hook. And
it's fun to see from a technology standpoint. It's cool to see just kind of what we're doing and what's possible, but it's so hard to keep up. It's so hard to know, the minute I start learning something, it's like, oh, well, that approach or that technology, it's not even used anymore.
I know it's,
and the open source models that are out there, because I've always been a big person involved. I love open source and just the ability to kind of tinker. And at my core, I'm still a tinkerer. And just seeing everything that's out there, it's like, oh yeah, that's so 6 months ago. You can't use that. You got to use this thing. This is a newer approach. It's like, wow.
It's so crazy.
Yeah, but I kind of like it though too. I mean, I think that's why I've been in this field for 30 years. Is that I kind of like the managed chaos or controlled chaos, whatever you want to call it, because the constant changes and the frequency of just how much our industry has evolved and changed and. How much it's still the same at the core of it. The issues are still the same. We still have a problem translating things to the business. We're still not doing basic hygiene type stuff. So it's all, a lot of the
everything's
same,
changed, but it's totally agree. It's like I've got a slide on the challenge today, and at a high level, nothing's changed. We're securing our environment. We're securing our devices. We're securing our people. We're securing our data. And I always argue what's really changed is the complexity.
Yep.
the fact that I can literally hand off to my supercomputer from my computer with the toggle of a keyboard, and then walk away and stay on that connection as I go from my Wi-Fi to 5 or 6G. I mean, that's pretty heady stuff. Um,
And it's
and
amazing when
and
we look back for somebody that's been in as long as, as we both have, remember how things were in like the late 90s, the early 2000s, like when mobile devices first came out. It's like, oh, wow. And then
yeah,
what's
you could make a
smartphone?
phone call.
Yeah. And then you got a smartphone. It's like, oh, wow, it's got internet, but the internet's like, it feels like a 300 baud modem. Like, okay, this
Yes,
is great, but I
yes,
can't do anything with this. It's just amazing to
exactly.
see how much it's progressed and what we can do now on mobile devices. Yeah.
And all along, nothing's changed. We're
Yeah.
just still
Yep.
trying to secure those devices.
Yep.
It's kind of wild where we're going. Do you see that report that came from Anthropic here 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago about the whole orchestrated attack that was
Oh, yeah.
80
Yeah.
to 90% autonomous?
Yep.
So human intervention was less than 20, maybe even as little as 10%. 30 companies targeted. I mean, I took that 2015 page report and I put it into Gamma. Gamma, the presentation tool.
Oh,
You
yeah.
should check it out. Gamma.ai said, make me a 10 slide presentation. Boom. It's, awesome. Because it kind of just breaks it down. Pretty startling stuff. And that's the side. The only way we're going to fight that stuff, Joshua, is fire with fire, right? I mean, we're going to have machine learning. We're going to have bots that are fighting against the bots that are attacking us, right? I mean, I
Right.
don't see
Yeah.
it any other way.
So first thing is I'm not super surprised by the Anthropic report. I mean,
Yeah,
attackers and cybercrime, all that kind of stuff. They're always going to be leveraging new technologies. They've always been they've always had a lot of automation. They've always had a lot
yeah,
of tooling and marketplaces and all those kind of things. So
yeah,
it's natural that they would actually start adopting AI to, it gets just the law of numbers, right? They want to be able to
yeah.
get to as many different places that they can attack, and why not leverage the best breed of technology?
Hey, look at man. If I had an assistant that I could have, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. It's why everyone,
Yeah.
I would think, should use it. I mean, my belief is you're not going to get replaced wholesale completely by AI, but you will get replaced if you're not using it and someone else does your job, but they are using it. I think
Yeah, I think it's a critical skill that everybody needs to have.
totally agree.
You are
And I talk
ignoring
to
it.
people. I talk to people, and I don't really. It's like, are you
Yeah,
kidding me?
get on
Because
that.
you
You
know
got
what I
to
believe is going to happen, Joshua. I believe that it's very close that we're going to be able to arbitrarily, and these bots were going to be the source. I'm going to say, I want to have 200 IQ points in electrical engineering, in mechanical drawing, in mechanical engineer. You pick your subject, pick your discipline, and you're going to be able to get that. It's going to be a game changer in our world, but you have to have the ability to, you know, it's sort of like, you got to be able to wield that jackhammer, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You can't just grab and pull the trigger. That thing will get away from you and you'll do damage, and then you'll never go pick it up again. You know what I mean? It's a horrible maybe analogy, but I think of it as, if you really go into it with some discipline and structure on how to use it, and to think AI first in your life, in your day, and get better and better at it, then it can be just such a life
yeah.
changer for everything.
Yep. It's an amazing tool in the arsenal, but it's a tool that you have to use, because if you're not using it, then you're going to fall behind. And the other thing, you brought it up, right? That everybody else is using it. So somebody, whether it's from a company standpoint, your competitors are using it. So if you're not using it, you're going to fall behind. From a personal standpoint, well, somebody else that's hired, that's looking to,
Yep.
that's looking for a role in the same field, they're using it. So
Yep.
am I going to look different if I'm not using it? It's just,
Totally.
you got to use it. It's a powerful tool, and everybody should be using it.
It's true. And I remember several years ago, companies would boast to being cloud first, right? And now I'm a big advocate is you should really think to yourself, AI first. How could I
Yeah.
use an AI tool? And I don't know if you've seen that. There's a website I used to make a joke in the delivery as I told my audiences about it. I bet you wondered, you know, when I said you have an assistant that knows everything the internet knows, you maybe thought, I wonder if there's an AI for that. Well, all you have to go to is there's an AI for that.com, no apostrophe, but it's literally there's an AI for that.com, no apostrophe. And they have, I don't know how many they have now, but the last time I showed it, they had 40,000 AI, and when I first started showing it, it was like 6,700. So in 2 years, it just went crazy.
2 years from now, it'll be at like 500,000 for all we know,
Yeah,
right?
but you can search for anything,
Yeah.
and you'd be surprised what's out there.
It's funny too, I mean, everything has AI nowadays, or they at least, most everybody's working on something. I think it's a board level directive too for a lot of companies. So now when companies are saying, "Oh yeah, no, we're AI this," I'm like, well, that's not even really an advantage anymore, because it's the companies that are not doing that you would be like, okay, I'm assuming everybody has it. So if
Yeah.
you're not, that'd be my bigger concern is the companies that are not.
Well, and come on, AI is like I think of cloud. Okay, and let me explain what I mean. And I know cloud is not really this vapor that just happens to hold data. There's a server somewhere that processes and has storage, no different than it used to be when it was in yours, right? But we call it cloud because of AI is the same. I mean, machine learning, it's been around since the 50s. So this isn't new. What's changed is the power, the ability to do what you guys do. I trust, store, just enormous amounts of data. And that combination has proven to be unbelievable, right? Because AI can slice, dice, mince, chop, and peel differently than you and I. Much arguably better, more efficient, with more different options, right?
And even if it wasn't necessarily better, it can do it way faster. So that's the other key thing. Like even if it can just do it at the same level that you're doing
That's a
it,
great point. That's a great
if it can do
point.
it 1,000 times faster, then it's like, well, then why wouldn't I hand off those mundane, cumbersome type tasks that I have to do every day anyways?
Totally.
So I use it for, literally I'll post in, if I copy something from a website, say, turn this into a CSV and just let it do that. I could do that through some scripts or through some other way, but it's like just post in the AI. It'll do it and come back and say, here's your file. Like
It's
that's
brilliant.
simple things.
I know, and I have I think Well, let me ask. So, how broadly is, because my feeling is within the circle of trust, like we were talking about, lots of AI use. But what I really want to know is if I go to um, Zurich and I go to one of the floors of their processors and there's scores of, are they using it? Are those knowledge workers on a day-to-day basis? I'd love to see the bell curve of AI implementation for a company.
Yeah.
How flat, how high, how, you know what I mean? Where's it at? Because we hear we have a tendency to talk to ourselves, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And if you're in the industry, you're right in it, but you step a couple rings outside of that bullseye,
Is it
it's a
really
different
providing the
world.
value, and are the teams actually using it in those some of those knowledge worker
Are
roles?
because I think what's happening is I do think a lot of companies have said, "Hey, we've got, you've got Copilot now, and notice how all your emails are summarized." But what does that also mean?
That you had way
So,
too many emails to begin with, and
no, it also means that, not that I'm not aware it's happening anyway, but something's reading my email,
oh yeah, that yeah.
right? It's so
And it depends
everyone.
on where it's coming from, right? We already give our email to Google, for example, if you're using Gmail, and then they've got their
Correct.
AI on top of it. It's like, okay, well, they're already seeing those emails, so
Correct. And, it's just,
plug in something
um,
else. It's like, okay,
arguably, for any company you work for, there's nothing private. I mean,
I mean,
if it's
yeah,
on the device you're using, they're very likely going to know it. But it's just, I wonder how many people are getting the memo that says, along with this new Copilot investment, we're going to invest in you, Joshua. So we've got this prompt training, prompt orientation, whatever, for 6 weeks, for an hour during the day. We're paying you for it, that kind of thing. Um,
that's
you know,
super super important, because I think that's the missing piece. People buy the AI and they think it's just going to magically transform the employees, and
yep,
you need to have some enablement sessions. You need to have some training,
totally.
prompt engineering, whatever. We're doing a lot of Claude Code across our engineering teams, but we also brought in a consultant that's helping us figure out how do we actually, enable these teams to use Claude Code in the best way, right? How do we
Yeah,
construct Claude MD files? How do we, what specifically do we use Claude Code for within these teams? And
right,
that makes a
right.
bigger difference than just giving it to them and saying, okay, go figure it out. Because, there's lots of different ways to approach it, but you've got to have something a little bit more structured so that you can get the value out of it, because they're not cheap either. That's the other thing about all of these AI tools. They're not cheap whatsoever.
Yeah,
So
well, we know OpenAI isn't losing $500 billion by charging you nothing.
yeah, yeah. And they're still underwater with as much as they take
Exactly,
and as much as they charge, they're still not
which is
profitable.
which is crazy,
Yeah.
which is crazy. But it's exciting. I said for many, many times, Joshua, the most exciting thing about this industry overall is no matter when you get into it, you're getting in at the beginning of something.
Yeah.
And I always think of this industry like a big wave. If it's not moving, there is no wave. So, get used to it. And the coolest, neatest, most fast changing stuff is that white water, right, hanging out on the edge of the wave.
Yep.
And as it gets adopted, it moves through the wave. And then, unless they add relevancy, make it cooler again, it becomes the still water behind the wave. And
And then there's a new wave with a new set of new water.
exactly.
One of the things I always tell
And
my teams is that, if you're bored in security, then you're not looking at it correctly, because there's always something to do. There's always something to research. There's always there's always stuff to do. So
there's
there's no
always
reason that
some,
anybody should be sitting around saying, I don't know what to do.
and a new way of looking at it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's the other thing that keeps it fresh. But I think that's why, Nadav's comment spot on. It's just continuous learning. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
hey, look, man, I don't want to keep you. We could probably go on for another hour or two, but I've really enjoyed chatting with you. We kind of just kept it all over the map, but I like it that way. Um, I enjoyed it very much, and would love to have you back again. We could talk more.
Sure. Sounds great. I'd love it.
Oh,
Thank
okay,
you so much
so
for having me on.
yeah, let's do a quick plug for you guys. We didn't really spend much time talking about Hydrolix. Why don't you give them the elevator pitch on who you are, how they can find you guys? Because obviously, I'd like to know more about it, and I didn't really pull on that too much.
Sounds good. So we're Hydrolix. We're a streaming data lake platform that allows you to query and use petabyte level log data and access it in an efficient way. You can get more details about the product at Hydrolix, HYDROLIX.io.
Got it. And so is it just, I'm curious, I have a big, massive data lake, tons of data, and then I get to sick whatever analysis tools, or is it unstructured data, structured data?
It's primarily structured data, time series data. So that's the key thing. We're effectively a time series database.
Got it.
And we have connectors for, you can, link it up to your Splunk environment. You can link it up to your Spark environments.
Got it.
Connectors for Kibana, Grafana, Superset, and a few others. So, and those are all listed on the website. But basically, the goal is, how do we provide access for teams to store data at immense scale for long periods of time without it costing,
without breaking the bank.
Yeah. And we do it, because we're leveraging commodity storage, S3 buckets and, similar technology. We can do it for a fraction of the cost that, it would cost, doing it on-prem or doing it in hot storage.
Yeah.
Basically, the idea is everything is hot within our platform because of the way we index and query everything and use use object storage. So that's what gives us the advantage of being able to query things and search things and access your data rapidly.
Got it. Cool. Very cool.
One of our big things was we did the Super Bowl last year, and we were within that time frame, we were logging 17 gigabytes of logs per second.
Oh my goodness!
It's a lot of data. And teams were able to, run queries on that data in real time and get, responses within seconds.
Wow. It's a fun time, man. It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
definitely
exciting. Is. I love this stuff, man. Hey, Joshua Scott, Chief Information Security Officer at Hydrolix. Thanks a ton, man. I really appreciate it. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I really did. It was great. I always enjoy meeting new, brilliant people doing amazing things, talking about the biz. So thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. If you like it, share it, tell your friends, subscribe, and we'll look forward to having you back on the next episode of Talking Cloud. Thanks so very much.